The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
A very good morning to all of you. On behalf of the Embassy and the Consulate General of the Kingdom of the Netherlands, the Benelux Council, Abu Dhabi, and the Netherlands Business Council, UAE, a warm welcome to our second food security webinar. A special warm welcome to our Ambassador of the Kingdom to the Netherlands, His Excellency Lodi Embrecht. We're very happy to have you with us today. And looking back, we also thank Her Excellency Mariam bin Mohammed Saeed Al Hadeb, Al-Miri, Minister of State for Food Security, for kicking off our series of food security webinars last month. We feel very strengthened and supported by the UAE authorities in our Dutch vision to bring value to the UAE food security and offering tangible solutions to this region. For those who don't know me, my name is Stephanie Slagstrabel. I'm the chairman of the Netherlands Business Council UAE, and on behalf of Barbara Varnik, the chair of the Benelux Council in Abu Dhabi, we are very proud to offer you again a great agenda. Our webinar is powered by one of our Netherlands Business Council members, and on your right side you see a control panel. In this control panel, you can see a section where you can ask questions. Now, please feel free to ask as many questions that you like today, and our moderator, Gus Gellekes, will address those questions at the Q&A during this webinar. While looking at our agenda, our topic of today is the food supply chain in the UAE in light of the COVID-19 crisis. Our objective today is to provide you with an insight in the recent developments in the UAE regarding food logistics, storage, imports, and food safety and quality control in this particular context. What are the challenges and what are the focus points? What are the business opportunities across the food value chain? Our esteemed panelists will answer your questions today. We're very happy to have with us Mr. Essa Al-Gouder, Mr. Paul Vrijhof, Mr. Philip van Meer, and Mr. Prius Chauhan. Our moderator, Gus Gellekes, will introduce them to you later. Now, on behalf of myself and Barbara, we hope you will enjoy this webinar, and it's a pleasure and honor to hand over to His Excellency Lodi Embrecht, Ambassador to the Kingdom of the Netherlands in the UAE, for his keynote speech. Lodi.
Can you hear me? I hope so, but
yes.
Technology is not really my... Yeah, okay, great. Technology is not my really strongest point here, Stephanie. First of all, thank you, Stephanie, for the nice and friendly introduction. And good morning to you all to the second webinar on food security. Yes, the second seminar. And you might wonder why. Why is the Netherlands doing all this related to food security? Is it to tell them that they have this great trade volume with the UAE, like $8 billion a year? Is it to tell again that we have more than 300 companies working in the UAE, more than 100,000 Dutch people visiting the UAE per year? No, that's not it, but I've told you that anyways. It is because we believe that the UAE is embarking again on a road that is very interesting for the Netherlands: food production, agriculture, and in that sector, we as a small country in Europe, we have a story to tell. That's what I'm going to talk about with you today. Now this is a webinar, which is still a bit odd to me, to be frank with you. So I'm talking to a screen, right? And there is no interaction with the audience, since I can't see you. The upside, however, is that we have people from both the Netherlands as well as the UAE participating. So I'm going to talk a little bit about both, and I'll do that within 5 minutes, so Stephanie will not get too angry with me today. First of all, the UAE. There is absolutely no doubt at all that the UAE is a global trade and logistics powerhouse. Absolutely. But there's about 90% of all food in the UAE is imported from abroad. And that makes the country quite vulnerable Food security has always been an issue in the UAE ever since the early days, but still. And when we talked with the Minister of Food Security not too long ago, she said that in 2008, we really felt it in the UAE for the first time. That was in the midst of the global financial crisis, and it had a kind of trigger down effect to food sector, and the prices went up at 200%. 200%, that's really substantial. At that time, the UAE government took a very strategic decision to start investing in food security, even producing food outside its home territory in other countries. Now, fast forward to 2020, COVID-19, Corona. Let me tell you, there was never a problem with food supply in the UAE. At all times, food was readily available for all people living in this country. But the government realized that we're still stuck with this 90% we have to import from abroad. And we really need to step up our game. And we really want to become more independent as it comes down to food and food supply. And in a cabinet meeting, they talked about this, and they gave the Minister of Food Security a couple of issues to address. And for all the Dutch people, listen carefully. Countries.
Lodi, something is wrong with your slides.
With my what?
I can hear you again.
You can hear me again? Where did you lose me? Okay, I'll continue then. I'll continue. How can we make sure we attract companies to the UAE, and how can we make them part of our ambition? We have to look at logistic chains again. Are we doing the right things? And a side note, KLM flies 7 days per week food, cargo from the Netherlands to the UAE. Mind you, 30% more in the first few months of this year during Corona than compared to a year ago. So in that sense, it tells you something how dependent this country actually is. Another very important issue for the UAE is how can we get young people interested in agriculture? How can we get them involved in agribusiness? Can they start up businesses? What can we do with universities? And look at administrative procedures. Make it simpler. Facilitate trade, if you like. Electronic health certificates are one of the things the UAE is looking at. And all this to become less dependent on third countries. And I'm telling you, the UAE is very, very serious about this. Now, look at the Netherlands. And I'd like to look at the Netherlands starting with a quote from National Geographic. This tiny country, the Netherlands, feeds the world. And now some of you may think that's a bit an exaggeration, but I'll tell you, in 2019, the Netherlands exported for about 100 billion euros on agricultural goods, services, and products. 100 billion euros. Now, to put that in perspective, that makes us the second exporter of agricultural products in the world, after the US. It makes us a global leader in the export of tomatoes, onions, and potatoes. And that's not at all bad for a country half the size of the UAE. That's really not bad at all. Now, how did this happen? Was it always there? No. It all started in the Netherlands post-World War II, but it really took off 20 years ago with a national commitment to create sustainable agriculture with goal, twice as much food, half as many resources. Twice food, half resources. And I believe that we were quite successful in that. Many farms managed to reduce dependence on water for key crops with about 90%. We almost completely eliminated the use of chemical pesticides in greenhouses. And Dutch livestock producers use 60% less antibiotics than ever before. Now think about that for a moment. Think about what that means for the environment, but also for society. Healthy products, healthy food, healthier people, and less pressure on the healthcare system. So ultimately, it's a chain reaction that is really, really important, I believe. Now, how did we do that? How did we do that? I believe key was the triple helix model, as we call it. That's nothing really complicated. It's a triangle. Picture yourself a triangle with three sharp edges: private sector, government, and education. And they work very, very, very closely together in the Netherlands. Innovation runs via companies to universities, to research institutes, and all this stimulated by the government, the customer, society, people, and the environment in mind. Another thing we had to tackle in the Netherlands was young people. Young people were not so much interested anymore in agriculture. They were turning away from the sector because it wasn't really sexy anymore, right? They're looking for careers in other sectors like banking or whatever. We turned that around, and I believe that now in the Netherlands, young people see that agriculture is in fact big business. It's high-tech business. It gives them an opportunity. It gives them, in most cases, an income higher, much higher sometimes than the average income in the Netherlands. Now, all this is brought together in the Netherlands in something that we call Food Valley. And Food Valley is an organization where government, industry, and education work together to create the next generation of food, services, etc. Keep that in mind. Now, back to the original point I raised, the UAE and the Netherlands. I believe that the examples that I've mentioned are opening the door to many, many forms of cooperation on a government level, business level, and educational level. And I do believe that we do not start from scratch here. I do believe, and I see companies and organizations from the Netherlands getting more and more involved in the UAE. It used to be a kind of, I don't want to be disrespectful here, but kind of hit and run. You sell, you get your money, and you move on to the next contract. No more. What we see now with more and more Dutch companies is a commitment and a willingness to be part of the adventure, develop agriculture in the UAE. And that's possible these days because modern technology works. It really does the trick, even in a desert environment. Look at Pure Harvest, growing tomatoes in Al Ain, extremely successful Dutch technology. It's there. We can see an interest in reaching out to younger people as well. We had extensive talks with the UAE government on how can we connect young Emiratis to the Netherlands. What can we do? We're not yet there, but the interest is absolutely available. We see an interest in modern technology, high-tech farming, smart farming, vertical farming, indoor farming. All the opportunities are there, and I do see that the Netherlands is looking with different eyes at the UAE towards UAE these days. Now, and in all this, you might think, UAE is a small country, 9 million people. What are you talking about? Well, go back to what I first said. This country has logistics systems set up second to none. Second to none. And within this region, this is a hub. This is a place to be. And through the UAE, through its infrastructure, through its companies, you have a market of 3 billion people in the region. And that's very substantial. And that's very interesting. So in that sense, don't forget that part. A few weeks ago, Fleur, who was also my colleague Fleur, she's also somewhere in cyberspace, and we met the UAE Minister of Food Security, and we mentioned to her, we, the Netherlands, want to be your best friend. So let's team up. And that's also the message I want to put out there. Let's team up with the UAE. Let's see what we can do together, create a win-win. And you can be part of that. And that's why we're organizing these kind of webinars, to get the message out and to get back to us. Because we are there also for you. The consulate in Dubai, the business councils, and the embassy. Knock on our door, visit us, ask us for help, ask us for advice and introduction. We'd be more than happy to help you. Also the other way around, UAE companies, more than welcome to come to us as well. We'll be there for you. if you come from the Netherlands, don't forget to fly KLM, because ultimately that's also a good thing to do. Looking at the clock, Stephanie, you cannot be too unhappy, I think. I recently kept it within the time limit. I thank you all for your attention, and I really hope to see you all soon, either in Abu Dhabi or in Dubai. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ambassador, for your keynote speech, and we're very happy to listen to you. And also, it's so correct that the Netherlands businesses are here for the long run and the willingness to be part of this agriculture adventure. Without further ado, I would like to hand over to our moderator of the day, Mr. Gus Schellekens, who is the partner EY Climate Change and Sustainability Services. Gus.
Thank you, Stephanie. Good morning, everyone. Good morning, Your Excellency. Thank you for your overview. It's certainly interesting to hear the insight from the Dutch point of view and what's happened in Holland over many, many years. I think my takeaways from that are it's obviously long-term planning. It's not something that can be put in place overnight. There's a need for a holistic approach involving lots of different stakeholders from industry. It's a journey. And it's also exciting to see what the outcomes are that are possible as a result of approaching this challenge in this way. And certainly looking ahead, it looks like an exciting industry and an exciting future. Today, we have an excellent panel group to help us unpick some of these things in a little bit more detail. They cover a range of the food supply chain, and I'd like to introduce them to you. And if one by one, if you could turn on your cameras and your microphones at that point. To begin with, we have Mr. Essa Al-Ghurair, Al-Ghurair Resources. Please join us, Mr. Essa. Paul Vrijhof, Strategy and Business Development for Abu Dhabi Ports, obviously a key part of the logistics chain. Philippe van Meer, Director Middle East and Southern Asia for Air France KLM. And finally, Piyush Chauhan, the Lulu Group. Welcome. Good morning, everybody.
Morning.
So I'd like to begin. Sorry, I'll just point out to the audience that Mr. Chauhan has had some challenges with his video, so he will be joining us and contributing. There's just no image at this point. Gentlemen, I'd like to start in turn with each of you with just a brief introduction. So let's begin with Mr. Essa. Could you just introduce yourself and also your company and explain what part of the food chain your company operates in?
As you see, my name is Issa Al-Ghurair. It's a family business that my father and grandfather started in the milling industry. Started the flour mill in 1976, but I joined the business in the grain business in 1984. And since then, I am in the food business. I've been working in the grain business. As I mentioned, we have established our grain silo and grain project in Jebel Ali, which is at this moment we are doing about 300,000 ton of grain storage. And one of the flagship of we have shifted from flour milling. Now we are doing about 1 million ton of canola grinding, where we are exporting not only to the local GCC, but also we go as far as China. So with this one, I would like also now started a new business for me and my children, and we are focusing on agriculture. And my passion is for vertical farming and hopefully do something with our friends in the Netherlands.
Fantastic, thank you. It's a long history and an important part of the economy. Paul, if we can turn to you, please. Paul, I think you're on mute.
Hi, good morning, everybody. First of all, thank you for inviting Abu Dhabi Ports among such a... Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Can you hear me? Yeah. of all, thank you for inviting Abu Dhabi Ports among such a reputable group of supply and food experts. And of course, the Dutch business community, as Mr. Ambassador Lodi mentioned, a leading force in global food production, trade, and R&D. We're happy to be here today. Abu Dhabi Ports, maybe a little bit of background. We are, of course, known for being a ports company. We operate and manage 10 ports across the UAE. But more importantly, our value proposition in the food industry goes broader than that. We have an industrial zone, Kizat, which is strategically located in between Abu Dhabi and Dubai, which is 400 square kilometers of industrial land, including a emerging and fast-growing food cluster. We have a logistical team, which is very actively involved pre and during Corona in providing end-to-end solutions for essential supplies of food. We have exhibition areas, hospitality areas, which we repurposed during this crisis. We're heavily involved in managing food supply chains during the crisis. On top of those three clusters, we have our maritime cluster, which is more the offshore side of the business, and a digital cluster, which we are seeing in this current food industry emerging into a more and more important asset. So our presence in the food value chain is very integral and is basically end to end from logistics to ports to actually potentially hosting Dutch investors in the UAE.
Yeah, fantastic, great, thank you very much. Philippe, if I can turn to you.
Thank you. Good morning, everybody. My name is Philippe Van Meer. I'm responsible for the Middle East and the Southern Asia region for Air France KLM Cargo. Yeah, I think we all know that the airline industry is enormously hurt by the fact that with the outbreak of COVID-19. Just to give you a bit of a picture on what the situation actually is here in the Middle East for Air France KLM Cargo. Beginning of March, we were around 35 flights per week, passenger flights per week. And on the 20th of March, it was 0. At that stage, yeah, you really have to look, okay, how are we going to restart this business? And we, within Air France KLM, we started with a very basic skeleton network, we call it. And we only started with 3 flights out of 7 per week from Amsterdam to Dubai and vice versa. It's a complete different picture, but yeah, you have to start from scratch, and that was what we started at the beginning of April. Quickly, we scaled up to 4, to 5, to 7, and now we are daily back on KLM and 4 on Air France. So the skeleton network which we introduced was really successful. Why? Because we offered a fixed schedule to the markets from Amsterdam, from Paris to Dubai, and also vice versa. And I think that's really where I think it's key also for customers to rely on, so that they can plan their logistics accordingly. So our strategy remains, because what changed after COVID-19, I think, yes, for the airline industry, a lot changed. However, for cargo, the strategy remains for us to keep on focusing on, yes, on perishables, but also on pharmaceutical logistics and on express cargo. These 3 are since already 5 years within Air France KLM are key. We keep on investing. Might be surprised, but we keep on investing to develop these products. For example, we are still creating cool rooms in our hubs in Amsterdam and Paris. So that's probably also the reason what the ambassador said, like, hey, we see an increase on imports of 30% of perishables. That's key. And then you have to think about, it can be strawberries, it can be peppers, tomatoes, whatever. And it doesn't all has to be produced in the Netherlands, but of course it can also come from US, from Mexico, via Amsterdam, via Paris to Dubai. And that's actually our role, and that's I believe a success also during this COVID-19, is that we create the air bridge from around the globe to Dubai with perishables. Yes.
Thank you, Philippe. I think it's sometimes something that's invisible, but obviously very, very important for the economy and for people, obviously, particularly during situations like this. Mr. Payush, if I could turn to you, I think everybody knows Lulu Group in the UAE or the Middle East, but perhaps you could also introduce yourself and your company.
Sure. Thanks for having me. Good morning, everyone. I represent Lulu Group here, and as you rightly said, Lulu is a household name, and we take pride in having the tagline "Where the world shops with us," and we've added the punchline "safely," just to make sure that we are creating a very safe environment for everyone in the GCC and in the 12 countries that we operate our supermarkets, hypermarkets, and shopping malls on. So just to give you a little bit of context of Lulu Group, this is almost a 45-year-old group headquartered in Abu Dhabi, and we predominantly are into retail, hypermarket, shopping mall destinations. But apart from that, we also run a lot of food processing plants, be it in India or all the 22 sourcing destinations. So as part of the food security of the region, I would say players like us are playing a very, very key and pivotal role in terms of making sure that we are sourcing the best around the world and making it available at an affordable price to all the customers in this region. So we'll talk about how we are working with a lot of producers and farmers worldwide to predominantly help food security with the government of Abu Dhabi here, and then trying to help that.
Perfect. Thank you. Thank you, Piyush. Yes, I mean, that's exactly the focus of the webinar today, is to look in a bit more detail at the wider supply chain. As I said earlier, a lot of it is often invisible for the consumer, but there is a lot that's involved, a lot of pieces that need to fit together extremely well for this to work consistently day by day. I'd like to move on to one of our first sort of areas of discussion, which is looking in more detail at the supply chain that each of your companies operates in, and providing a little bit more detail about perhaps the immediate changes and challenges that you faced as a business, and then how you responded, and what the outcome has been. Are there still areas that you're struggling to address at the moment, or have you managed to pivot in a way so that you can ensure continuity of supply, and in fact, you've switched to almost a new way of operating? A very simple example from the UK, which I was reading about, which might be of interest to Mr. Issa, is at one point during the pandemic, there was no flour in the supermarkets, and the newspapers had big headlines saying Britain has run out of flour. That, of course, wasn't true. There was enough flour, but the bottleneck in the supply chain was the companies that package flour into small packets that you can sell in the supermarket. There were not enough of those, and they could not keep up with demand. So there was enough flour. It's just there weren't enough companies that could package the flour into small packets to deliver those to the supermarket for consumers to buy them. So it's interesting to unpick some of the supply chains sometimes and to see what's actually happening behind the scenes, because of course what we see in the papers doesn't always reflect the real situation. So Mr. Issa, if I could start with you, just in terms of the supply chain that you're involved in and some of the changes that you saw and how the company has responded and how it's operating now.
You see, you rightly said, there was the panic. The biggest problem was the panic, and this is created a big rush in everything, and everybody wanted to stock. The government, the UAE government has made, I don't know, they predicted something like this will happen, and they had in October 2017 had appointed a minister for food security. And I told her, you have a life example now in front of you to learn from it. So there must be a good lesson to be learned from this epidemic. But in our case, we had to put our factories running 24 hours, 7 days a week, producing to the customer's requirement. But it's a peak that has leveled afterwards, maybe 2 to 3 weeks afterwards, we have seen that everything went into back to normal. Which brings me back to when I discussed with the minister, I always tell her that we should, as a government, as a ministry, and to put suggestion of keeping some stocks of material in the houses. It is like in in the UAE we have a tank, water tank on the top. So we to see that this stocks of water is available. So we need to see that this the stock of water is there, is available for the difficult times. So similarly is in the food. I've noticed in Switzerland, for instance, there is nuclear bunker they have, but they have also stock of food that could last them up to a month. But it is up to the consumer. He is to rotate this what is called the stocks. So similarly, I've been pushing the minister is to find a way is to establish some kind of home stocks rather than putting pressure on the factories and maybe on Lulu to replenish their stocks all the time.
Thank you, Mr. Issa. I mean, it's an interesting point because it obviously makes a huge difference. You have countries like Sweden and Switzerland, for example, who are perhaps more prepared for situations like this. And by having something at a national level, it avoids the short-term spikes, perhaps in the supply chain and the pressure on suppliers. Although I was reading, I think in Switzerland, they decided that coffee was not essential anymore. So they've removed that from the national stockpile, which may or may not be a good decision. Paul, if we can turn to you, please, for Abu Dhabi ports. I mean, you see a lot of the trade coming in and out of the UAE. What has happened? And you've talked a little bit about what you've done differently, but can you share some more details, please?
Yeah, sure. I think certainly COVID-19 has disrupted the global economic picture, but our business operation has continued to be in place 24/7, and that includes both the port, the maritime, and the logistical side of the business. What we have observed was a short-term response, and as Mr. Issa pointed out, also a focus on the longer-term improvement. I think it's a testimony to our leadership in our country that some of the challenges we faced in Europe and Australia and North America, where shelves were empty and quite dramatic events happened in supermarkets, we haven't seen that in our country. Thanks to producers and logistical companies across the value chain, the shelves kept at very high levels, which is a testimony, right? Knowing that we import 90% of these goods. That being said, I think there's now also an effort going into what do we want our food ecosystem in the UAE to be post COVID, right? Yep. How much more processing do we need? How much R&D do we need? How much technology do we need? Do we need to be so reliant on imports? And what level of strategic stocks for which items do we need to help? And we as Abu Dhabi ports, our industrial zones, our logistics, and our ports actively involved in those long-term discussions, helping the government as well. In terms of changes during the crisis, obviously being a diversified ports company, there are some clusters in our business that have suffered, right? The cruise business, for instance, came to a complete standstill in the midst of the season. We have some flows going through our ports from China, which are impacted. If you look specifically at the food side of the business, that business has seen double-digit growth throughout the cluster, the crisis, because stocks were increased, warehouses were filled up, so our warehouses are full. We've been involved in finding additional warehouses, converting of locations that were not used as warehouses into actual warehouses for food. We've also seen a diversification in items that were brought in. So we, for instance, had the first livestock shipment coming in during the crisis. Yeah, the food segment we've managed to go through, and we're working also on building a more sustainable food ecosystem in the UAE going forward.
That's great. Thank you, Paul. Philippe, how about from an air point of view? You talked earlier about priority imports. Obviously, there's a focus on medicines, but food is sort of probably secondary to that. But what have you seen? And you touched a little bit about the frequency of the flights, but what else can you tell us about what happens behind the scenes?
No, indeed, it's as I said, like we went from nothing, and then you have to build up again. Maybe also good to indicate to everyone here in this webinar that yeah, until almost last week we were only operating passenger aircrafts with only cargo, so zero passengers on board except the pilots. But just to give this understanding that Air France KLM is mainly a passenger-driven airline where we sell cargo in the belly of the aircrafts. So when we started again with 3 out of 7, what we simply did is looking to, okay, when is this perishable business and the majority of business, when is it needed in the UAE? And that's how we started with 3 out of 7. So we said, okay, it has to arrive on Friday night, Sunday night, and Tuesday night, so it can be available next day in the supermarkets. That's logic-wise, because then it can be sold to customers. So that's how we started our schedule, actually, very simple. And that's also how we slowly, by bits and pieces, increased our frequencies. And yeah, also internally, we were able to make this a success, because at the end of the day, we were only operating cargo, and yeah, planes are not flying for free. So it should be worth doing it. So I think by doing this structurally and actually growing this skeleton network, I think it became a success. And then if you look to the different origins, not most of it, not only the tomatoes and strawberries are coming from Netherlands, but we see also more and more imports are coming from US. But because we also have our network between Amsterdam, Paris, and US, and vice versa, you can easily feeder better the UAE. That's actually what happens. I think yeah, that's the main point. So we closely listen to our customers and what their demand is, and we try to adjust our network to that. I think crucial is that you have this kind of tripartite discussions, not only with, in this case, with the agent, which is very important, but of course also with, at the end of the day, the customer who's buying the product, so they have a clear understanding when goods have to be there. And I think that's crucial. So really to have this tripartite discussion and understand each other's business and business needs. Yeah.
Thank you, Philippe. I mean, there's 2 points that resonated with me. One is, I guess, building from the bottom up again. So if you stop and business stops completely, you have nothing, which is, of course, worrying from an economic point of view, but it's also liberating in a way that you can design and re-engage in a completely different way. Have a luxury of deciding where do we start, what's important, you go back to basics, and then you begin to build up a business that is more aligned and more focused on delivering what is needed.
No, indeed, because everybody, you could easily say, oh, why don't you fly daily or whatever? Yeah, but we didn't know what to expect, and I don't know how if you have any idea how much it costs to operate an aircraft, but it's not. It's not simple. So you really have to build up, and I think that's good to really build up and to be sure that you're doing the right thing, and indeed listen closely to the market, what is the demand, and that's the way how to move on. Yeah.
The other point you mentioned, and I'll carry this on into the request to Mr. Piyush as well, is the interconnectedness, the fact that you're part of a bigger network, and therefore the ability to be resilient and responsive, and you have access to more partners and stakeholders. And Mr. Piyush, perhaps we could start with that. I mean, Lulu, as we've heard, has done an excellent job of keeping the shelves full of the supermarkets and helping to reduce the panic amongst the population when COVID first arrived. but tell us what went on in the background to make sure that the shelves could be full. And I guess also as tastes and demands have changed over the last couple of weeks because of the pandemic, how have you made sure that you still have enough of the right types of things that people are buying today?
Yeah, on that topic, I think regular communication is of course key. And then from an airline perspective, we mainly ship the perishable, the high sensitive cargo, let's say it that way, because the bananas and the apples will go by boat. That's clear. Also very important, but I think it's also key to have good control on your cool chain. So indeed, if it's coming from so we on one side we listen very careful to the partners like Lulu, but also on the other side it's important to have your cool chain on order, so that when you go via Amsterdam or Paris, that you treat the perishables at the right temperature, so the lifetime can be extended. If you don't put these things in a cool room or whatever. And if you don't try to minimize the ambient situations, which sometimes is, then the shelf lifetime will only become shorter in the UAE, and I think that's really crucial. So on one side, yes, you must offer the necessary capacity, but on the other side, it's really crucial to remain the cool chain, and that's for pharma and for perishables key. Yeah.
I mean that's an important point. It's perishable, obviously, so have a time window within which it's still useful and has economic value. And Mr. Piyush, from a Lulu point of view, it would be interesting to hear your thoughts just in terms of how you've kept yourselves stocked, what changes have happened since the pandemic struck, and any insight into background logistics that have enabled you to continue to operate.
Sure. And I think thank you, Gus and Philip, for adding that point. And if I were to just summarize whatever Mr. Asa, Mr. Paul, and Mr. Philip said, I think we had to orchestrate all those problems into this single organization. And I will try to give you a perspective as to when the panic broke. Obviously, there was a view that we need to do something quickly to make sure that the supplies are in place. Yeah? So I would very proudly say that the government here was very, very supportive, and alongside government, we basically created a crisis management team, which sprung into 3 different directions. The first team was kind of looking at what are the items or what are the SKUs which constitute an essential basket, because you would not want to source the most rarest of the cheese at this point of time, but you would want to source the rice, the pasta, the corn oil, and so on and so forth. So there was one team who was looking at what are the items which would be required if this pandemic situation continues and there were disruptions in supply. So there was this sourcing planning team which happened. There was a sourcing execution team which went all aboard in terms of reaching out to parties. And if you would remember, maybe in the month of March, almost all the sea supplies and everything had dried up, because none of the ports outside were working. So it was very important to work with the government, with a lot of air cargo suppliers to basically make sure that the flights are running so that we can source some of the critical supplies. And that happened within a period of 5 to 10 days. We were able to basically work with the team here. We worked with Etihad, we worked with Oman Air, and basically trying to secure a lot of capacity on the air cargo side of it. The third part was how do you make sure that you make environment which is clean, sanitized, and easy for shoppers to shop for. And so we have to make sure that we take care of the employees who are coming and serving the customers. We have to make sure that the SOPs need to be rewritten. So there was a lot of these 3 pillars which came in together to make sure that we are able to source things and present it. And also to mention the last part, which is kind of Mr. Paul's area in terms of the port capacity. And I remember I myself visited MENA port, and they had a lot of this capacity which was lying around. and the government was very kind of helpful in terms of saying that use this capacity, because if you were to stock items for, let's say, 6 to 9 months, you would need a lot of overnight capacity, and the government was very helpful in terms of providing some of the capacities for sourcing a lot of the stuff. So so I will give you an example. We are kind of having stocks which will last for about 6 to 9 months without any problem, and these are the steps which taken in the right direction with the help of a lot of our cargo providers, be it the airlines which are there, be it the port facility, and be it our suppliers, like Mr. Kurar was talking about. All those orchestration put together has actually made us present a situation in front of our customers, which makes that none of the shelves go empty.
Mr. Piyush, can I ask a little bit about technology? Have you used technology, new technology, or have you used existing technology in new ways to help you respond to the challenges of the last few weeks? How big of a part has technology played in all of this?
So in our context, obviously in retail supply chain, technology plays a very important factor. You need to make sure that you are orchestrating enough across the 22 sourcing locations which are out there globally. You are able to do things much faster with technology, which is on the sourcing and storing side of it. Even on the B2C space, wherein we saw that obviously not many people were willing to come out and shop with us on the physical, and obviously physical was the only or most predominant channel for us, and we are having 188 hypermarkets across the globe, and we take pride in giving a wonderful experience in our store. But we overnight kind of increased our capacity to pick. We increased our capacity to have deliveries done through our vehicles. So we predominantly looked at expanding that capacity as well. But obviously there were limitations in terms of reaching to the customer volume and demand which is out there. So there were a lot of this technology related push which has happened, which at least led us to a situation which is that we are able to cater to a large part of our demand through the B2C channel, through our efficient supply chain processes, so that everybody is looking to a more secure position from a food supply perspective.
Okay, that's great. I'm conscious of time. We have about 10 minutes left. We have 1 or 2 questions from the audience. I will sort of ask our final question and also ask some audience-specific questions to the relevant individuals. Mr. Issa, if I could start with you, perhaps. We've seen a lot of change in a short period of time, and I'm sure there will be more change to come next months as we continue to grapple with COVID. My question to you is, what changes do you foresee in the UAE in the next months or years in terms of how both local food production is encouraged in the UAE, but also perhaps in terms of supply chains and ways of working? We've all started working in different ways. Will we keep those new ways of working? Will we go back to the old ways? So a couple of areas that the listeners would be interested in hearing your thoughts on, please.
Yes, I think the government is very eager, and we have seen just recently that the Prime Minister Sheikh Mohammed had put his direction is that now there will be available of water from the desalinating plant to the food security project, as well as security industries, that is in the food industry, I mean in the food security, to help them to narrow the gap. I mean, from going from 90 to maybe 80% import or 70% import, but it's a journey that has to be done, and you have to start somewhere. As Ambassador Lodi has mentioned, that the Netherlands has taken a step long time ago to achieve. Now they are second in the world for export. We're not looking to export, but we're looking for sustainable supply in the local market. I think there will be in the future a hybrid between what we, in the logistic, in many things, a hybrid between the old fashioned and the new era. I don't think that this pandemic things will be, determining. Everything has to be done now on the, I've seen the children, for instance, they would like to go back to school because they would like to see their friends, and so in the business also you will see things like that. There will be a hybrid, and I think that COVID will teach us some new lessons to be learned. And one of the things I could say that I've been having a session with Ambassador Lodi is how to collaborate with Dutch companies, bringing in technology that it is there to this part of the world. It is not hindering it, it is building into the relationship, otherwise somebody else will do it. I always say, for instance, half process things in one of the country, in Holland, and then bring the remaining half here to finish it off. In the food area, it is a little bit difficult, but in other industries, it's possible.
Thank you. No, you raised some very important points. I'd like to carry that across to Paul. And Paul, we've also had a question from the audience about, is there an opportunity to improve the efficiency and sustainability of the supply chain? Obviously, you're only part of it. You facilitate the supply chain, but if you could also touch on that briefly.
Yes, there is. There definitely is. And I agree with Ms. Issa. I think the future supply chain will be a hybrid model. So there will be continue to be an import of food items. So good news for Philip and myself. But we strongly also believe that there will be a more localized production capability. Yeah, in that sense, we are investing. We're preparing for that new reality. We are investing in additional cold and dry storage installation, as well as distribution center. We have launched our first indoor tomato farm in Kiesraad, and we expect the vertical farming to increase. And that will require a different way of managing supply chains. The opportunities will not be limited just to growing. I strongly believe that it will be across the food value chain. So be it in fertilizer, be it in machinery, be it in equipment, and the Dutch have a lot to offer to that. So I would like to invite the Dutch business community to approach us and work with us on how we can together develop that new hybrid. And that includes the logistical side of the business.
That's great. Thank you very much. Philippe, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I like this topic because indeed we see more and more also, and it's also always focused on getting these goods into the UAE, but indeed we also see more and more now on the export sides, for example, out of Oman. So we So we see things are more and more here produced, which I think is very interesting. Yeah, we are also flying back, let's say it that way. So why not having the business the other way around? That's interesting. And yeah, on the sustainability part, I think it's definitely high on our agenda within Air France KLM. We are focused on it every year. We also reducing really things like aircraft pallets, nets, and that's etc. Really to improve on our sustainability. Yeah, so that's definitely high on the agenda. Yeah.
Great, thank you. I mean, I think sustainability as a whole has probably had a boost to some extent. For years, of course, the UN is talking about the Sustainable Development Goals. We've seen some action by some companies, but perhaps not as fast as originally hoped for. I think the pandemic in some ways has highlighted how really exposed, I guess, supply chains are, how there's for resilience as well. So hopefully, some of these new ways of working will stick. The hybrid model continue to improve, and we'll be able to deliver more and more sustainable outcomes whilst still providing the food that we need. I will turn to Mr. Piyush for your view as well from Lulu Group, please.
Sure, and I think some of the points are already covered, but I would say that there needs to be a more focused effort in terms of bringing in sustainable farming, which I think will be the next big thing. And technology in food security will play a very, very important role. As you would understand, we are still in early days of vertical farming. We are still in early days of hydroponics, soilless farming. So there are a lot of these technologies which are quite promising, but doing it at a really very, very big scale, and then making sure that we work towards making UAE really a food secure country, and increase from what at the moment is only 10%, but looking at increasing it to, let's say, 20, 30, 40% in the future. So a lot of collaboration needs to happen across the supply chain. A lot of new technology has to be given opportunity to prove at scale. And if all these things come together, I think we are looking for a very bright future for UAE. As you would see, Singapore has done a great job in terms of bringing in food security there. And I feel that UAE also can play a big role in sustainable farming in the days to come.
Fantastic, thank you. Gentlemen, we are out of time. We could keep talking for hours, I think, because the more we look, the more we find, and the more opportunities we can examine. I'd like to take this moment to thank all the panelists. Mr. Issa, thank you very much. Paul, thank you very much. Philippe, thank you very much. And Piyush, thank you very much. If you could turn off your cameras, then I will hand back to Stephanie. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you very much, Gus, for moderating this interesting panel, and thank you, panelists. Like we all heard a lot of opportunities coming out of this panel discussion. Collaboration, new tech, early days of sustainable farming. I enjoyed listening to Mr. Essa, how to collaborate with the UAE and the Netherlands to bring Dutch technologies here. Of course, there are many questions asked by our attendees, and we couldn't answer all the questions in this time. However, please reach out to the embassy, to the Consulate General, to the Netherlands Business Council, as well as to the Benelux Business Council for all questions you have regarding food security. We will be organizing more food security webinars over the upcoming months, and we prepared like a small survey for you to fill in. So please give us some feedback. Let us know what the topics are that are currently pressing within your organizations. We are here to support you. We are here to help you, and together we are stronger. Thank you so much for being with us, all of you today, and thank you again to our ambassador, His Excellency Lodi Embrecht, for the keynote speech. We are looking forward to see you the next time. Have a great day.